Now, the reason why we have other producers, have Marcus and Rick, is because when Brian and us got to a place which we thought was exciting, then Marcus and Rick have to actually make it sound good and make sure that we're playing it as well as we can. So that it's kind of good cop, bad cop situation, which is, you know, unfortunate for Marcus particularly, because I think we're all a little shell-shocked still from having worked with him, Marcus Dravs, because he's really the guy that, do it again, do it again, do it again. Not good enough, not good enough. And eventually, after 8 months of him saying that, we asked him to leave. Because we couldn't, it was never going to be good enough. But he was like a drill sergeant in the best of ways. And without him, we would have nothing to show for anything.
Well, the sequence of songs on the record is very important because, as well as the actual selections of songs, the order in which they run can give the overall kind of feeling of the album, whether it's up or down. And as we've experienced in the past, if you get that wrong, you can give over entirely the wrong perception of you know, what it's all about. So, you know, we place quite a lot of importance on getting the order of the songs right.
I remember when we released our first record, we went for a load of interviews in France, and it was when we had a particular track listing, and everyone was like, "Why are you so miserable? You know, this album is very depressing." And we thought, And then we had a listen to the track listing and thought, it is a little bit, kind of ends on a bit of a downer. So we kind of switched things around, and everyone's like, "Oh, you know, the sound of this record is very optimistic," and you know, it really changes the perception. So it has to be a coherent journey, but it also, you know, you have to really think very hard about the I think that, you know, the beginning and the end are so important, and if you get the tone of them wrong, it really changes the record. Chris always has a very strong idea of where he wants things in his head, and then we all have to kind of agree. But there are certain things that are, you know, fairly unanimous, and then it was just, we have these movable pieces of paper that you kind of switch around, and we each wrote a potential list and then a potential order, and then we just kind of work it out.
Well, the artwork, the paintings are a picture by Eugene Delacroix of the French Revolution, liberty in the French Revolution. And, and
then we painted on it.
Yeah. It was basically the idea of the song Viva La Vida, whereby the revolutionaries are knocking on the door of the palace, you know.
And then spray all the paintings with slogans and ruin all the artwork. Well, there was that looting, wasn't there, in Iraq? Maybe it came from there. Also in Wind in the Willows, just to take it, when the weasels take over Toad Hall. So it's about Iraq and also Kenneth Grahame's Wind in the Willows. But the title, let's talk about the title, because the title is important. The title of the album, which is Viva La Vida, or Death and All His Friends, is an odd one, and none of us are quite sure why it's called that, except that that's just what it has to be called, right?
Yeah. Viva La Vida was a Frida Kahlo painting. And the sort of choice element is like the film Dr. Strangelove, or something
about a bomb.
Learn to love, stop caring and learn to love the bomb. So that was its inspiration.
We like the idea that you can listen to it or not listen to it and then decide what it's called. A bit like those books where you can choose the ending. We wanted people to be a bit more free with our music. That's why there's about 3 different ways you can end the album, depending on which tracks you select and fast forward to. And there's 2 different titles. So if you want to make it a sad album, you can call it Death and All His Friends and skip certain songs. And if you want it to be a very uplifting album, you don't skip certain songs and you call it Viva La Vida. And then we don't get any blame for it being too uplifting or too somber.
We did end up using a lot more kind of programmed beats and programmed stuff. Not, sometimes as the soul rhythm track, sometimes as kind of fleshing out of the, you know, the drum track. So, I don't know. I think very early on, we were kind of, in the last couple of years, as everyone has really, the production values in hip-hop music is so, they're just impeccable. And, you know, to a large degree, it's 90% of, or 99% of the charm or the appeal of a song is the production in those terms, in hip-hop songs. So for an early period, I was writing a lot of stuff on, you know, on programming, on computers, and it just came from the desire to have something that would sound enormous in your car, you know, one of those banging songs. Yeah, it was just a desire to make things sound more punchy and bigger and more kind of, I don't know, more groovy. I think there's songs on this record we haven't ever grooved as much, I don't think. You know, it sounds a bit cheesy, but you don't, you know, there's songs that you can kind of move to, which I'm really proud of.